with this, we're going to do an interactive type of event tonight for our virtual hangout. So please use the chat and put your questions in there. We have a big group, so just remember to keep yourself on mute. That allows for our speakers to be front and center. It allows Erin and I to field those questions. Just really setting us up for a successful evening. And then Erin, would you like to thank our sponsors for us as well?
Absolutely. So I'll have you bring that up.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. So we are kicking off, part of a very exciting month for August. And of course, we want to thank our sponsors because they truly drive us to provide these education events every month. So we are so thankful. So tonight's virtual hangout is brought by West, Merck, and Daiichi Sankyo with additional support from GSK, Lilly, Gilead, Pfizer, and Immunogen. Now part of AbbVie. So certainly we are so grateful for their constant support, and we are in for a real treat and a lot of discussion. And hopefully everyone here feels the same way that Sue and I had, that this was just really motivating and inspiring and just a little checkpoint that we needed, as we think about our lifestyle and our healthy habits and maybe some of those areas of life that we tend to overlook a little bit.
Yeah. So, obviously we start off with our summer sips tonight with Erin, but tonight is one of the first of two summer book series, and we're featuring Anticancer Living with Dr. Lorenzo Cohen and Alison Jeffries, and we're starting off so strong and aligning beautiful with the mission of the culture and all the outreach that Unite for Her does. So talk about grabbing my heart with this book. It took me back 20 years. It took me back to why I created Unite for Her. And I am incredibly grateful to the both of these speakers tonight. So we are very excited. Just a little housekeeping as well. This is going to be recorded. So of course, if anybody misses anything, you can go back. You can watch our recording. We have an incredible virtual library, video library that you can get access to, and this will be on there as well. Yeah. All right. So Erin, I feel like, do I want to get you front and center?
You Absolutely. Let's do our summer sips.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So hopefully this is not the first time that you are hearing summer sips. We've been featuring zero proof mocktails all summer long. Aubrey has put together really great recipes and social videos on different ways that we can enjoy the summer months and entertaining and all of the fun that comes along with it without all of the alcohol. So tonight I am featuring a mint mojito mocktail. So this is on our blog. Sue, if you can post that recipe. This was Michelle's mocktail recipe. It's refreshing. Mint is such an important herb. So it's good for digestion. It has antimicrobial properties. If you're dealing with taste changes from treatment, we know that this helps to improve the taste of food. It can help to relieve indigestion. It's also a great source of vitamin C and beta carotene. And if anybody has an herb garden or is growing herbs in pots, we know that it is very easy to grow. So it's something that if you enjoy the flavor, definitely think about starting to grow it yourself. It's really hardy and it can be used in a lot of different ways. So tonight we are making a very, very simple mint mojito mocktail. So what do we need? I've got some limes. I've got a little bit of simple syrup for some sweetness to cut some of that acid. I've obviously got some fresh mint. And then as the majority of the beverage, you need some club soda or seltzer. I am using actually a no added sugar, but a flavored cranberry and lime juice seltzer, which I thought would pair really nicely, but certainly something plain would be perfectly fine as well. So the first thing you'll need, we're going to do everything in a glass. So you don't need any additional mixers, which is really nice. First thing that we're going to do is you need a tablespoon of lime juice, which is about half of a lime. So we'll juice this right into our glass. And remember, anytime we are making zero proof mocktails, we always say use that fancy glass. Use whatever you have on hand. This has some beautiful design on it. And I'm like, yeah, I will be fancy for the duration of our virtual hangout. So we've got about a tablespoon of fresh lime juice. I'm adding a little bit of simple syrup. You can really do this to taste. Start with a little bit if you want to add more, but this just sort of cuts that, like I said, the acidity from the citrus. We are going to muddle some limes. So I sliced, this is about 1/4 of a lime. So we have some lime that will go right in the bottom of our glass, and then several mint leaves. So like I said, mint is really hardy, so it's very easy to grow. And we're not going to muddle this for too long because we don't want the taste of the mint to get bitter, but we just want it to express its oils and really impart that beautiful mint flavor. So just some gentle muddling. Once we do that for about 10 seconds, we'll add our ice to our glass. Really, really simple, like I said. And then we'll top it with our seltzer. I'll give it a little bit of a stir. See, this even has some pretty pink flavor, which pairs really nicely with the green. I like to give this a little bit of a stir so you see that start to peek through. And then we'll garnish with a little lime. And I like to add some fresh mint right on top. So there you have it, really simple. I mean, this is something that we can all whip together at any party on a whim. If you're coming home from a long day at work and you want something just to kind of relax, but again, without the alcohol. So here we have our mint mojito mocktail. Oh my gosh, it's so refreshing. So cheers to that. Again, the recipe is on the blog. It's one of our many summer sips recipes that you can find. So if this is not speaking to your taste, be sure to go to our Unite for Her blog for plenty more recipes to try on their own. So with that, cheers. Sue, I'll turn it over to you.
Love it. You're making me thirsty, Erin.
Oh my gosh, so good.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right. So as we get into our book series tonight, we are very excited for us to connect with the authors of Anti-Cancer Living. And first, I'm going to start with Dr. Cohen. Dr. Cohen is PhD. He is a part of the Richard E. Hayes Distinguished Professor in Clinical Cancer Prevention and the Director of Integrative Medicine Program at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. He is the founding member and the past president of the Society for Integrative Oncology and a former vice chair of the Academic Consortium of Integrative Medicine and Health. Dr. Cohen has published more than 200 scientific articles in top medical journals, and he has edited 2 books on integrative medicine and cancer care. And then we have Alison Jeffries, and she is a national board certified wellness coach, author, and educator. She works with individuals looking to make changes in their lives, including people facing a cancer diagnosis and a cancer, and for the cancer caregivers as well. Alison also works extensively as an educator, and she works so closely with Lorenzo Cohen to foster health and wellness in individuals and in their communities. And Cohen and Jeffries live in Houston with their 3 children. And please join me in welcoming our guests and authors, Lorenzo Cohen and Alison Jeffries. Welcome. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you so much, Sue, for inviting us. It's such important work that you're doing and this huge community that you've built that support each other. And we feel very honored to be invited here today and to share this time with you all.
I'm thrilled to be here tonight and look forward to a great interactive dialogue.
And Erin, I look forward to making that mojito.
I know, right?
It is delicious. You will love it.
Yeah. Well, our book in hand, we would love for you both to just give us a little level setting. I know you thought that you would introduce a little bit of a meditation to get us started, and share our mix of 6. And then we're going to dive into some questions.
It's sometimes great to come together and all of this positive energy that we can share. So if it's comfortable and feels right for you, sometimes just putting your arms in the air and just stretching up.
We happen to be standing, of course, already. So,
and then just releasing. And if it feels good, close your eyes, sitting up straight, hands in your lap or on your knees, and just breathing normally. Taking this moment to honor yourself for prioritizing this hour of sharing and learning. Not trying to change the pattern of your breath, just watching it as it comes in and out. Each breath is an opportunity to heal, to cleanse, and to bring hope and light into your life. If thoughts come along, which they always do, just watch them as if floating by on a stream. Acknowledge them, but just let them pass on by. Continuing that breath, feeling your shoulders relax and become heavy, your hands, your hips. We're going to do 3 deep breaths together. When you're ready, inhale, hold at the top, hold, and exhale. Breathing normally between these deep cleansing breaths. You're ready for your second deep breath. Inhale, filling your chest cavity with this air, holding at the top. Hold, and exhale, long and deep. Noticing that every deep breath you're taking is filling your cavity and abdomen with this cleansing air. Last breath together. Breathe in, top, hold, and exhale. Taking a few just regular breaths with your eyes closed, and when you feel you're ready, please come back. Great to let go of everything that you've been carrying today and to just come to this space where we can all share and learn from each other. So again, I'm Alison Jeffries, and this is Lorenzo Cohen. And we wrote the book together, Anticancer Living. And we did that because we, Lorenzo was working at MD Anderson, and I was an educator at that time, and we started a young family, and we realized that we had all this information that we could share and put towards our kids and work on kind of their toolbox and their life. And then we realized that we actually weren't doing it ourselves. And so we started to make this change in our life, and with a good group of friends as well. And then realized that we had a kind of a unique perspective. And decided to share that in writing a book. And we had been scientist and educator, husband and wife, mother and father. And then the day that we submitted the final version of our book, Lorenzo was diagnosed with cancer, advanced cancer. And so we then went from caregiver and cancer patient. So we've learned a lot, as have you all in your own journeys. So we're very excited to be here, and we're going to talk about the mix of 6. But Lorenzo's first going to give us just a short.
And also a bit of the rationale for why we wrote this book is that in interacting with our own community, let alone the scientific community that I worked in at MD Anderson with physicians and basic scientists and the rest, very few people actually knew that cancer was a preventable disease. We think about cardiovascular disease and the link between lifestyle, what you eat, and the stress in your life. Dating back to the 80s, there was evidence to say that excessive stress, and at one point it was the type A behavior, was linked with heart disease. But cancer was something that just happens one by chance, or what most people think, it just runs in families. So it's either bad luck or it's something I can't escape because of my genes. And something that not a lot of people know is really the minority of cancers are due to an inherited gene mutation. It doesn't mean that number is zero, but the number they estimate is around 10% of cancers are due to an inherited gene mutation. But even as we outline in the book Anti-Cancer Living, even with this genetic mutation that does increase your risk of breast cancer, ovarian cancer, which is what brings a lot of you here, prostate cancer, there's a gene that's been linked there. Even so, lifestyle factors can modify that amount of risk. And so in reviewing the literature, it became clear, in particular now over the past 10 years, even more so since we've actually published the book, the evidence is just really overwhelming that we can actually not only prevent the majority of cancers, but for those of us diagnosed with cancer, which is obviously most of us here today, the lifestyle choices we make can influence whether that treatment's going to work or not. And we can get into some of those details, but things like the microbiome, our immune system, and in Anti-Cancer Living, and happy to go deeper into the science, but a lot of people get scared going too deep into the science. We outline what are called the cancer hallmarks, and there's a whole appendix trying to make the understanding of the cancer hallmarks a little more colloquial and something through the use of a lot of metaphors and to be able to understand the importance of the immune system and what inflammation means and the concept of angiogenesis, where cancer needs to create its own vascular system to grow and thrive. And the cancer hallmarks, and now I think we're up to probably a dozen cancer hallmarks, and most recently the microbiome's been added as a cancer hallmark. The mix of six that Alison will quickly outline all influence the cancer hallmarks, decreasing our risk of cancer because we've modified the biological processes that cancer in some cases actually hijacks within our body to allow itself to grow and thrive. So we're constantly having cells mutating in our body. The key is to have all the systems in place to keep that mutated cell in check. That's something we're never going to avoid as a species, partly because we live so long now, is that when cells divide, and we have millions of cells dividing all the time, there can be things that go wrong. And we have all these processes in place to make sure that cell that's gone awry doesn't continue to grow in the body. When it evades those systems by activating the cancer hallmarks, then that cell will start to grow, and it's an unhealthy cell. It's a mutated cell, and then one cell turns into 2 to 100 to 100,000, and then it starts to form a mass in the body that we call cancer. So the key is to do everything we can, and there are things that we can't do in terms of controlling cancer, but to do everything within our power to deactivate those cancer hallmarks, make ourselves as healthy as possible to improve our chances. Now, that doesn't mean that we caused our own cancer. In my case, it was a melanoma, so I can blame my parents for not ensuring that I wore sunscreen, and I had multiple blistering sunburns under the age of 20. And just five blistering sunburns under the age of 20 increases your risk of melanoma by 80%. Ooh. So this is why we have this precipitous increase in the risk and of people developing melanoma exactly in my age group, because we didn't know about sunscreen or care about it, and we had multiple blistering sunburns under the age of 20. So that cancer that I was diagnosed with 6 years ago was the original DNA damage was probably when I was a teenager, early 20s at the most. And it just took time to, in some sense, grow. And there was a point where the cancer growth itself, in some sense, was strong enough to circumvent the cancer hallmarks that should have been activated in my body to keep things under control. So the goal is to create a body that is inhospitable to cancer growth through the mix of six.
And so just briefly, for those of you who might not have read the book, the mix of six encompasses these 6 areas. And it starts, we put it in a specific order because it was really important to us that we had people focusing in the beginning on the things that we thought were the most important. And that is love and support. That's your foundation. That allows you to make change in any area that you're interested in. It provides you with that support all the time from different people, and for your caregiver also needing their own love and support. So love and support. Stress, which is a big factor and a factor in the development of melanoma. So stress, followed by sleep, exercise, diet, and exposure to environmental toxins. So I don't know whether or not you want us to continue to give a little bit more, or whether we wanted to jump in. What are you thinking?
Yeah,
I think
we jump in, right?
Yeah, let's do it. So, because I'd love to hear the sort of, the perspective of our readers that are here with us today. And Sue and I will be monitoring the chat. And certainly if you want to raise your hand, if you want to speak with Lorenzo and Alison, will be watching that as well. So, I thought the first way that we could sort of dive in is just, this book has been around for several years at this point. So I'm curious if anyone here read this book years ago, or if this was sort of a new introduction, or how you got to learn about anti-cancer living. And I'll just share, when we were initially connected with Lorenzo, it sort of prompted this memory of like, I initially many years ago read Anticancer, and then sort of started to see Anti-Cancer Living, and I naturally just thought, oh, well, that must just be a follow-up to the first book. So then I read the second book, and it was many, many years ago, even before I really started to dive into oncology nutrition. And then here we are connecting with them again at Unite for Her, and it was this really lovely like flood of memories of like, oh my gosh, I did read that book. I love that book. And it was really just very inspiring to be able to reread it again. And like I said in the beginning, just kind of get me remotivated again. I think this is a good reminder. So if anyone wants to share how they came about it, we're getting some comments in the chat. When they were first diagnosed, someone else referred that person to read this book. Robin, I love that.
Correct. And I also remember just my experience, we're creating Unite for Her, right? So we created this in 2009, and we are diving deep into just getting as many individuals into our passport program of integrative care. And I remember the members of Unite for Her telling me about anti-cancer living. So they were sharing with me as we are giving this integrative care out to the world. They're telling me about your book. And I just love that, because we learn from each other so much. And just to be able to dive in and read this again in such detail, it just brought up so much from 20 years ago for me. So that's a little bit of my story. And I'm seeing a lot of people in the audience, it was new to them, right? And it's also very enlightening that physicians were recommending this book, Erin. Like, that is really good to hear, because sometimes there's that disconnect between the physicians and the patients on what they can do to gain control in a disease they had no control over.
One of the things in writing the book, we had over 1,100 references, and we wanted the book to be both a resource for patients, caregivers, but we also wanted doctors and medical professionals to have great confidence in recommending it. And so that was a vital component of our book, is having those references and knowing that this is tied to research.
Yeah, I love that point also, because often I hear from our members when they're speaking with their physicians about what they can do to support their health, they're often left with pretty general responses, or not not missing some good direction. So having this book as providing specific guidelines, tips. I love at the end of each chapter how you sort of put things into motion. You give specific things. Here's how you can manage your sleep and improve the quality of your sleep. So you give some really tangible tips. So I feel like even in that regard, this would be great for physicians to continue to refer this out as well when they can't answer those questions.
Well, and one of the biggest challenges we see within integrative medicine, and a huge component of integrative medicine, is counseling patients on lifestyle change. And Alison sees this with her own clients in her health coaching practice, is sustaining the lifestyle changes. So, somebody commented that they're new to the book, but not to the concept. So the mix, there's nothing new about the mix of six. Right. We all know the diet and exercise and sleep and stress and our love and support, the environmental toxins, they're all important in keeping us healthy. But what's often missing in counseling programs, as well as in the books that you look out there, is they present these as separate silos. And the research that we do, primarily, and partly because we struggle to get it funded if we do it more comprehensive, is siloed. So what is the effect of the Mediterranean diet? And we see epidemiological studies, you see clinical trials. What's the effect of yoga, stress management research that we do at MD Anderson? What's the effect of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia? And they're all looked at separately. What's the effect of a support group, but not a support group that combines diet and exercise and yoga and the whole component. And one of the reasons why we laid out the book in this way and have a huge emphasis and touch on this at the beginning of each chapter is the word synergy, and the synergy that you get from engaging in more than one of the mix of six. And the reason we laid it out the way we did also is because most people have heard that diet and exercise is important. And even now, the physicians who are the least aware of this will acknowledge that diet and exercise is important, but they kind of leave it at that. Yeah, you should up your dose of exercise and try and eat more fruits and vegetables. And they kind of stop there and miss the fact that we all live in community and these very complex environments where, unfortunately, there's often negative synergy that happens. Even though our friends may be well-intentioned, they're bringing over food that's not healthy for us. Instead of saying, why don't we go for a walk? They say, why don't we go for margaritas? Instead of saying, why don't we join a yoga class together? We have this extra stress in our lives, and the stress makes it hard to sleep and makes it hard to then want to engage in exercise and go out with your friends. And so we often see negative synergy, and the key is to create that positive synergy. And I'm the kind of person who goes all in. So I was ready, kind of all in. But then when I was diagnosed with cancer, I already had good support. My sleep was fine. I was probably not exercising enough, but then I became pretty hardcore in 6 days a week, not sacrificing my sleep like I did, and it's highlighted in the book. But I wasn't doing it a lot, or at that point, anything in stress management. So I already had deep yoga in my background, as we sort of outlined in the book as well, and had my own yoga practice, but I hadn't been practicing. So I went to the local group that we work with and decided to sign up for a 200-hour yoga teacher certification course while I was undergoing my immunotherapy, because it would make me accountable to the group, right? And these were total strangers to begin with, but then they became my classmates, and I was accountable to them, to myself. So I took my yoga practice to a whole other level, not because I wanted to become a teacher. That actually, when I had to do my hours to become certified and actually teach, it was causing stress teaching people yoga. So this is sort of extracting the benefits of my yoga. I don't need the certification. But
you go all in. You went all in.
But I went all in. Alison tends to not go that level.
I take the small steps and, think about what I need to work on. But, that accountability part is really critical. And, the diagnosis certainly is motivating, and it motivated Lorenzo to take up the yoga course. But it's not enough, right? You have to find that core the core values, the things that really matter to you, and put any change that you're looking to make linked to those core values. So if one of your core values is that I want to spend time with my family and I want to live as long and as well as I can so that I can enjoy that time, then you need to link that change to the core values. And that's why, you know, when I work with clients, you know, that's the important work that we do. And it provides the accountability to start off, that you can report back to me, but you're linking your change to something that really matters. The diagnosis gets you going, and organizations where you keep getting exactly like yours, you know, provides that incredible support and reasons why to keep moving forward and to keep making change. But then individually you have to say, why is this important to me? Why do I really want to make this change?
And in the book, we actually outline the initial steps of, for those who haven't created core values, the initial steps of creating core values. Losing weight's not a core value. A lot of people go into lifestyle change in our society to lose weight, to look better. That's not a core value. And so it's not sustainable. So you may do it for 2 or 3 months, you feel good about yourself, and then it kind of disappears because, like Alison said, it's not aligned with something that's really deeply meaningful to you.
Yeah, that's such a good connection. I appreciate that so much. And, you know, we you know, for her, give access to a variety of passport offerings. Everybody on here has a passport, right, that they can use. And we say the same. It is not one magic bullet. You know, it is a combination of so many things that allow you, like this community that's here, we see them over and over again. They form that community, that love, that support. That is one of your mix of 6. That is one of your core values, right? And to acknowledge that it's not just one magic bullet, right? You need a little bit of everything that makes you feel whole again, gives you motivation, gives you self-advocacy, purpose, right? And then it becomes contagious and you want to do more of that, right? Like just you wanting to get your 200 RYT teaching, right? Like it gets contagious and you want to do more and you're feeling that success and you're seeing change emotionally and physically. And that is, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, and with a community like you're talking about, we're each individuals and we're unique. And our stories, while we share many things, we also don't share many things. Yeah. But by hearing people in your community talking about their own journeys, you think to yourself, oh, I really like that. That really connects with me. I'm gonna bring that here. And then somebody else says something. And it just, it snowballs. And it's so, like you say, so vital.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Erin, let's go to the next one.
Yeah, I love this. And I would be very curious if anyone wants to come off of mute and share what surprised you most about the book. And I will share very quickly what surprised me most was their number one. Mix of 6 was the support and the love was number one. Seeing how, like, I look at nutrition and focus so much on that, but I was very pleasantly surprised. And also that sleep was ahead of nutrition, which if I ever need an excuse to be in bed by 8, thank you very much for giving me that excuse. But so I'm very curious if what surprised you and reading this book, or what really stood out as you worked through this mix of 6. Or if you want to put it in the chat, by all means, do that as well.
So I can read this one out loud from Annie. So she remembers in the book noting that there was no magic bullet, right? We sort of said that, no magic pill when it came to eating a certain amount of food to combat cancer, but that there was a mix of plant-based foods that were best. With that being said, are there some examples of foods, teas, etc., that are especially good for those with breast cancer? I believe Anticancer had a section on this. And just so you know as well, when they enter into our program, they get the Cancer Fighting Kitchen cookbook as a part of their package. They get a care box. And inside the first 40 pages gives this incredible glossary of foods and how these foods are anti-inflammatory, or they just give properties of nourishing and disease fighting. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I want to eat that, right? Because you're looking at food differently, or you're looking at ways to get the metallic taste out of your mouth. And so that is a resource that they have. But here, this one, Annie was talking about how Anticancer had a section on certain foods. So if you want to take that one.
Yeah, I mean, Anticancer Living similarly has a whole appendix on certain foods as well, in a similar fashion. A little bit different is we try to focus either on epidemiological studies or ideally on clinical trials, of which there are very few, meaning formal studies where a group ate certain dietary pattern or a certain dietary constituent, which is even rarer. One of the things just to caution about is when you look at certain foods being quote unquote anti-cancer, and some folks in the scientific community actually don't like that term because it may overly mislead, as does this data. When you take extract from a blueberry and you put it on breast cancer cells in a petri dish, it slows them from growing. But as one of my basic science colleagues says, who's a bit of a skeptic, you can take breast cancer cells in a petri dish and put salt on them, and that's going to kill them as well. So we have to be cautious in over-interpreting what's called in vitro data, this out of the body data. Similarly, the animal studies where we inject animals with tumors and we give them a high fiber diet, specifically cruciferous vegetable diet. Cruciferous vegetables are extremely important for the majority of cancers, and some of the data in particular for breast and ovarian cancer. And the cruciferous vegetables falls into the Brachus family, which is all the vegetables that children tend to not want to eat. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, bok choy, all that family of vegetables. And they're extremely healthy, high in fiber, and have what one could call these sort of anti-cancer constituents. But what's interesting to note that we've seen in dietary studies is when you go and you actually isolate some of what we would call the active ingredients from cruciferous vegetables and look at them in animals and or in small human studies, it's not as effective as the whole. And then we also see that when you start to look at even within these large dietary interventions or epidemiological studies, just at cruciferous vegetable eating, and we outline this in the book and have a figure to demonstrate this in particular, is that yes, high cruciferous is really important, but the people who did the best, and this was actually breast cancer patients, were the women who ate high cruciferous and overall high variety of vegetables in their diet. Here again, we come back to this really important word of synergy. So within diet, there's synergy. So one thing is good, but more is going to be more effective than even just the individual components and the benefits that you would get. A key is simplistically high variety, because each of the different components of this high essentially plant-centered high fiber diet brings variety. And what we've learned from the microbiome, and I don't want to go into that detail unless people really want to go there, is high diversity. And the only way to create a highly diverse microbiome is by eating a really diverse diet. So if you just think, blueberries and cruciferous, yes, they're both good, but if you just focus on those two, you're going to have a low variety in your diet. So the key is variety. plant-centered, low glycemic load, trying to avoid things that spike blood sugar, and
But grains as well.
and
Very
and not
importantly,
avoiding
grains.
healthy carbohydrates
That's
is
right.
critical for the microbiome.
I love that. I love that focus on variety. I'm glad that you mentioned that. And we had another comment in the chat. Svetlana was surprised by how many environmental factors carcinogens were exposed to in our daily lives. I think that number was staggering to read that number.
It's kind of the elephant in the room. And it's very hard, like Lorenzo was saying about sort of the siloed research. It's very hard to identify what is causing, cancers. But the environmental impact on our bodies is really, it's just got to be large. And so that's one of the reasons why, I mean, with 85,000 chemicals out there, and really essentially, 8% that have been evaluated, so that companies are able to use chemicals that have not been evaluated. And most of us don't really know that. And so that's why we talk about the precautionary principle. And that is that you do not use things as much as possible in your homes from the top of your head to the tip of your toes, without checking and looking at them. And the environmental working group, which I'm sure you've talked about, is the gold standard. And you can go and enter a product that you're using to see how it's rated, what are the ingredients. And, most of us could not get PhDs in this, and it's very complicated. But I kind of think about it as a burden. And if you want your chemotherapy to be working and other treatments to be working, if your body is burdened by, the shampoo, the toothpaste, the body creams, the makeup, the sprays in the house, all of that sort of stuff, while you're trying to have your body really respond to treatment. So I think, step away from all that stuff. It's a great thing to give a friend and people who say, I want to help you. And then you give them the EWG website and you say, I need to start fresh, or as I use up products, I'm going to buy something healthy. And so then you bring that on board. So at least your body isn't carrying that burden.
And the challenge in this area for scientists that the industry really capitalizes on is the industry wants the research to be done on individual substances. So let's say phthalates, and there's tons of phthalates, but even if you were to just pick one phthalate, they want you to prove that phthalate is harmful and at what dose, and isolated from all the other chemicals that could be in that beauty care product. And so it could be approved at, 4 parts per million. I'm just throwing out a random number because of a few series of studies, but it wasn't studied alongside the other 10 phthalates that may be in there and all the other endocrine disruptors that are in that beauty care product. And it would be absolutely impossible to study them in that way. And an example of how the cosmetic industry in particular has capitalized on lax regulation is with the word fragrance. Yeah. So you see the fragrance sometimes, 10th on the list of ingredients. You're like, well, that doesn't sound too bad. They've been able to get away with using this word fragrance that can be made up of over 100 different chemicals, but each of the individual chemicals are at such a low level that they in and of themselves don't need to be individually listed on the label. But nobody knows the interaction of those 100 chemicals that are in that word fragrance that is on that list of ingredients. And you'll be hard pressed to find any, unfortunately, beauty care products that don't have that word fragrance in there. It's hard, really hard to find that.
I would say that people are demanding change in these areas. So there are lots of companies, but you have to do a bit of research. And that's why things like the Environmental Working Group are a great resource. And there's several apps as well that you can get on your phone, and you scan the barcode of the product while you're in the drugstore to see what it has to say. I was also going to say, that the Anticancer Lifestyle Program, run by Meg Hirschberg, has a fantastic segment on the environment. And this is a free program online. Lorenzo sits on their board, and I do their learning circle work with groups. And they have a fantastic free online program that talks about the environment. It talks about many areas, but their environmental section is phenomenal, and just, you cannot believe how devastating, the exposure is. It's very compelling, and it's great to watch with families. We really encourage that whoever you live with, that you bring them along on this journey. And, so often, if you're dealing with kids or parents in your environment, or a husband or a wife, that you say, this is really important to me, and I want to make this change together in our family, and I want to be in partnership around this. And that you then try new things, and they're not always successful, and that's fine. Then you say, okay, what have we learned from this? We don't like X. Okay, let's try something new. And you still keep going. And then you say, this is for your toolbox so that you're going to have a healthy life. If you're talking to your children, we are going to eat kale, and we're going to eat it 3 times a week. And so I'm willing to find a great recipe that you will like it. But we're going to keep doing it.
Thank you, Alison. I'm actually putting in the chat, they asked for the name of the program. And it's the Anticancer Lifestyle Program. And is it Megan Hirsch?
It's Meg Hirschberg and Nancy Kane are the founders of the program. She's a breast cancer survivor. And it's a great program to do online, and very user-friendly, and small bites, that you can watch and do it with your, family and kids.
Perfect. Yeah, we also have leaned into this area too. Again, it was something that I dove into when I was sick, because I was shocked. I was shocked at all the chemicals that the US allows, but is not allowed over in Europe. And we have an advisor, Jolene Hart. I don't know if you know Jolene Hart, but she wrote the Eat Pretty book series. And she is our advisor to actually help take the guesswork out of understanding how to read labels, because just what you said, it is so difficult to look at that. Like even they'll get around it by saying proprietary ingredients, right? But we know what that means. They don't want to disclose. So we actually have a guide on our website, and our community, it gets that in their care box as well. So what you've given us now is just like one more resource that they can go to with this Anticancer Lifestyle Program as well. And we give them access to like a Cure organic product, so they can find it and see those products in real time and use it, because sometimes it is about access as well. So thank you for sharing that. And Lorenzo, thank you for putting that in the chat.
One of the things also, just a word like natural, you don't be fooled, right? Natural means nothing, absolutely nothing. No. And so you have to look at, use an app or go to ewg.org to evaluate. All these catchwords have no meaning.
Yeah, it's marketing, right? Clean beauty, right? It's marketing, and they're trying to jump on to that bandwagon, right? And it might be clean in one area, but not in another.
I know just off the top of my head, I'm looking at these apps. So there's Think Dirty, Shop Clean, there's Yuka, and there's another one that's really good too. If you Google, they'll come up with a list of ones, and then you can evaluate. But I have a couple of those on my phone, and then I just scan the products, while I'm at whatever shop, when I'm thinking of trying something new.
Perfect. Yeah.
And with my kids, right?
Yeah, right.
It's really, really important to start with the kids. I mean, we unfortunately have had cancer, and we believe that the majority of the developments of cancer are happening in early adolescence and in our 20s. And it could again take 20 or 30 years for those initial mutations to develop and grow, or they're growing. And because of that excess burden that's on the body, it's hard for the physiological system to keep things in check. So really getting this younger generation off to the right start is just so critical. This surge in what's called early onset cancers that we're seeing in society now, in particular breast and colorectal cancer, where women are being diagnosed, and there may be some of you here today in your 30s or late 20s diagnosed with breast cancer. People that we hear about because of celebrities dying of colon cancer in their early 30s, early 40s. That was unheard of, to really be diagnosed with breast cancer or colon cancer under the age of 50, 25, 30 years ago. And it's not because we're living longer. Nobody knows exactly why. We do think it's really the mix of six, but the environmental one would really explain why in just one generation, a generation and a half, there's these unprecedented changes in the age at which people are being diagnosed.
Yeah, it is really striking for sure. Sue, thank you for putting some of those links in the chat. I know we have a few minutes left, and I thought I would ask the group, for those that have read it, if there was any sort of passage or sentence or paragraph that perhaps you highlighted, or you put a little post-it to remember, or you wrote down as something that really resonated with you. I will say, I listened to the audiobook for this, so I was like keeping notes as I was listening. And one of the things that I actually think about daily now is upping my empathic game. And I just thought leading with empathy and understanding is just such a reminder that I think often gets set aside in a world of busyness and appointments and to-dos and work and life and stress and all of the above. And I just thought that really resonated with me. So if anyone else wants to share, if anything really stuck out to them or really struck a chord.
Yeah, I know I'll jump in too, because sleep, I am in need of my sleep. So is everyone, right? But I know that is like a non-negotiable. And I remember the year before I got sick, I was not sleeping, I was not eating. My mom passed away, and it was a year, right? But to hear you talk about sleep in a way that I can visually see the brain restoring itself at night, I love that example. I could feel it. I could feel it. And I do go to bed going, rest and restore, rest and restore. It is, I am in bed at 9:30. I'm an early riser, but and when I am off, I know like that's my hot button. That's where exhaustion can set in if I'm not getting that balance of sleep. So I did love your visual that you gave, because I am such a visual, but I can see how much science goes on when you are sleeping that we take for granted. And if doctors could write a prescription for sleep, oh, right? Like yeah. So that one stood out for me.
Yeah, I love that. And Robin said, our genes are not our destiny. How empowering to hear that. I love that.
Yeah. So this is, so Annie was talking about MBSR. We actually do this with Jefferson Health. We have an MBSR program that we pay for our community to go to. It's 8-week session, actually, an 8-week series. So thank you. Our community can use their passport squares for that. So thank you for mentioning that. Again, you just talk about synergy. Like I so appreciate you and all the science and the research and the 1,100 references that you have there. That just validates so much of what we are striving for, because it is so true. When we talk to our physicians, our physicians refer Unite for Her, right? That is a part of our recruitment plan. But boy, when they can refer it with these references and with an SABCS poster, an abstract, and a clinical trial, and that is what we need. So it just feels so good to have this book to put in front of them, right? we had a couple other things in the chat too, and just talking about relationship care as self-care, really valuable. Thinking about the Americans that are projected to receive cancer diagnosis in 2017. I don't think it's 1.7. I think it's 17 million, isn't it? Is it 17 million? I thought
That was, I
higher...
think, a statistic from 2017.
Yeah.
Or yeah, I think that was, yeah.
Yeah, I know, like you had opened up talking about almost, it's not if, but when, the way that our environment and different areas are leading, and then what can we do to make that change? Yeah.
And, you know, independent of cancer, right? Because, you know, we all want to control and or be cured of our cancer, but not to then be diagnosed with heart disease or some other, you know, chronic illness that we know is linked with lifestyle. So, of course, we call it anti-cancer living, but it is really about just improving overall health and well-being and trying to thrive as we age. And you know, as people age, there's a higher probability that we are going to get illnesses, and we want to be as healthy as possible. If that ends up happening, if there is a second primary, we want your liver and your kidney to be as strong as possible to manage everything that is going to be thrown at us. I saw there was a lot of questions about stress, which is wonderful to see, because typically we go down the rabbit hole of diet and dietary constituents, because that's certainly in my life, and I know in many lives, much easier to change diet because you have to eat every day than it is to manage our stress. And as was noted, next month, we're going to be going deep in the area of stress, not avoiding love and support, because you have to start there. But we'll spend a lot on specifics about managing stress, how to set yourself up for success in stress management, an unfortunate the motivator to scare you into why it's so important to manage stress. And I'll show you data of all the harms of chronic stress. Then Alison will show you the flip side of all the benefits of managing our stress.
And our own.
And yeah, absolutely. I love that you know, the ideal is not to live a stress-free life, but it's how we respond to the stress. And making that clarity in that chapter was like, oh gosh, a weight was lifted. I'm not trying to like live this perfectly ideal life, but it's okay to have it. How do we react to it? And that's the important part. So we are so excited to have you back in September to really focus on that, because it's something that our community is really thinking about clearly.
Yeah, we did get a question too that was actually emailed to me personally, and it was just asking you, because they couldn't join tonight, were there any current studies that are looking at past emotional trauma, PTSD, codependency? You know, she would love to, number one, if there's something going on, participate, and number two, if there's something in the past that she could draw from. So stress is, I'm so grateful you're coming back to talk about this, because it is a big factor, and one I know too well as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. Any final thoughts, Lorenzo and Alison, as we wrap our virtual hangout, that you'd like to leave with our readers this evening?
Well, just to reiterate a little bit about Lorenzo touched on it, and that is guilt, blame, shame. Leave all that behind you right now, right? Today is a new day. This moment is a new moment. It doesn't mean that you won't circle back to some of those emotions, because those are important indicators of potential things that you might want to address, but really that you are here where you are in this moment, that you have shown up to learn more, to be part of this amazing community, and that there is hope out there, and that there are things that you can do each and every day, starting with the smallest of steps, to make your body healthier, to make it as inhospitable to cancer as possible. And we really thank you for, you know, being interested in our book and our message, and you know, for all of us to share this time together. And we look forward to returning.
Yeah, and as Alison said, each day is a new day to be able to step forward. I'll, kind of acknowledge and be honest. Today I didn't exercise. I was, in between Zoom meetings, taking my father to the hospital and managing that, and I
Yeah.
go for my run, and now we have a family dinner, and my day will end, and I won't have put in the hour of exercise that I typically want to do, and that's the way it
It's
is.
okay.
And
Right.
tomorrow, after our 8 a.m. meeting, I'm going to go for a
Have
run
a new
and
day.
get my
That's it.
exercise
You can try again. You
and
can
Yeah.
try
schedule
again.
it. I'll schedule it
Yeah.
in so that
Yeah.
nobody puts a meeting in that spot. And that's
Yeah.
something, one strategy is to schedule this for yourself on your calendar,
Yeah.
just as you would an important meeting.
Yeah, be gentle with yourself, right? You've got to be gentle with yourself that you didn't do it today. That's okay.
It's
You take a
okay.
deep breath and you say, tomorrow's a new day, and I'll
That's right.
schedule it in my calendar.
Yeah.
I love that.
I felt that in your book. I felt the agency that you give us to try again, right? And to be gentle with ourselves. And we say that to our community, right? And especially as women, we do enough of that, right? We do enough of
Right.
the blaming and the
The
what did I
judgment.
do? And
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So I felt that theme all the way throughout. And I just can't thank you enough. I'm going to get a little emotional. So I thank you for joining, and we truly value you, and we value that you got to speak to our beautiful community tonight. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you
Thank
again.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah, wonderful.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
you got it.
Seeing you next month.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, Erin, so
I-
good, right?
So good. And I just want to say, I keep going back to Emily's comment. She's not with us anymore, but she's working through the book in a deliberate fashion, right? Like piece by piece,
Yeah.
taking time to work through it.
Yeah.
I love that. There's no rush to sort of read it all at once, but just kind of being thoughtful about working through it and just speaking to the individual parts. I love that she shared that. So, so yes, we are so grateful to Lorenzo and Alison for joining us. We had a lot of inquiries, particularly about stress, and we know that that is a topic that is really resonating with our community. So we have them coming back. So our speaker series in September, on September 12th, will be about fostering calm and resilience in everyday life. So be sure to come back to focus a little bit more on that. But before we get there, remember we have our speaker series tomorrow evening, August 8th. We will be joined by Char Charette, Melissa Rosen, who is their Director of Education, talking about managing cancer risk within the Jewish community, talking about genetics, testing, cancer screening, and so much more. So be sure to join us tomorrow night. And then we've got our second book series on the 21st. We'll be discussing healing and cancer with one of the co-authors, Dr. Alison McManaman, a book that came out earlier this spring. So we're so excited to be channeling our inner reader throughout as we wrap up summer. So be sure to join us. All of our events are recorded and will be on our Her Library. And Sue, we can give one final thanks to our sponsors.
Yeah, we can't do what we do without them. And we love that they lean in and they invest in us as a community. So our education events are presented by West and Merck and Daiichi Sankyo as our presenting sponsors. And then additional support is coming from Lilly, GSK, Gilead, Sciences, Pfizer, and Immunogen, who is now part of AbbVie. So they are really leaning into our advocacy work, and we appreciate them. And we can't bring what we do, over 40 of these now a year, to our community. Our latest one being Cafecito in Spanish. So we're very excited about bringing that whole new dimension to our community, our Spanish speaking community. So Erin, I think that's a wrap.
Yep,
Happy
wonderful.
August.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. Yeah, hopefully this was really informative and just inspires you to continue reading and making some healthy changes. So with that, enjoy the rest of your evening. Sue, thanks so much for being here.
You got it. Thank you, Erin.